think we're ready. This talk's going to be a little more centered in everyday life, how one might utilize the principles. I wanted to say a few words about the bibliography. I used as a structure the 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life by Karen Armstrong, and the book Spirituality of Imperfection, Storytelling in the Search for Meaning by Ernest Kurtz and Catherine Ketchum. A quote from The Voice of the Silence, and a Zen Practitioner's 12 Steps by Roche Bernie Glassman, and 9 essays, Buddhism and the 12-Step Model, and the 12 Traditions of AA. So that's kind of and you will see those on each step. 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life by Karen Armstrong, and the Spirituality of Imperfection, Storytelling in the Search for Meaning by Ernest Kurtz and Ketchum, are two books which utilize two different step formulations in their text, but seem to embody the spirit of how the task of engaging compassion in society and the individual might be accomplished. A Zen Practitioner's 12 Steps, adapted by Roche Bernie Glassman, were also helpful. Miss Armstrong is a religious historian who was awarded the TED Prize in 2008 for her work in bringing an understanding through her writings and documentaries of the common threads that bind all religions. The prize enabled her to create, launch, and propagate a charter for compassion. And she makes it clear that the 12-step program does not depend on supernatural or creedal conditions. Her writings are the embodiment of the heart doctrine because of her personal spiritual practice and experiences. And in Miss Armstrong's book, the first chapter of which is titled Wish for a Better World, she entreats us in the draft charter to call upon men and women, one, to restore compassion to the center of morality and religion, to return to the ancient principle that any interpretation of Scripture that breeds violence, hatred, or disdain is illegitimate, to ensure that youth are given accurate and respectful information about other traditions, religions, and cultures, and to encourage a positive appreciation of cultural and religious diversity, and to cultivate an informed empathy with the suffering of all human beings, even those regarded as enemies. I will utilize her steps, as well as the Zen Practitioner's 12 Steps and the 12 Traditions of AA, as a structure to work from. Okay, the first step, learn about compassion. I admitted I was powerless over my attachments to my ego and not in control of my actions. And in the tradition, the AA tradition, the first tradition is our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends on AA unity. Now, these traditions, I think, are great for that can be practiced in any organization. So in learning about compassion, educate yourself on compassion. Sign the charter, get involved, form a reading discussion group. I've been getting together with a group of women every Monday afternoon at the United Lodge of Theosophists for several years now. And we've been reading these books and having wonderful discussions as a result. The first two of the Four Noble Truths are pertinent to this discussion. This is the noble truth of suffering Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, death is suffering, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are suffering. Association with what you dislike, separation from what you like is suffering. Not getting what you want is suffering. The 5 aggregates, which constitute the person, are form, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness, affected by clinging or suffering. This noble truth of the origin of suffering, it is desire, literally thirst, which gives rise to fresh birth. Bound up with relish and passion, running here and there, delighting in this and that. In other words, sense desire, desire for existence, and desire for extinction. This is your training ground. Through our mutuality and awareness of our suffering, yours and mine, I've come to know powerlessness. I'm grateful to be awake enough to welcome the change and understand how to work within its parameters. And so, the action steps, which I wanted Bianca to, I'll say a few of mine, and anybody that could throw one in having to do with the jewels or whatever, just throw it in there and she'll put it on the board under step 1. Action steps. Educate yourself in compassion, sign the charter, get together with a like-minded group. What would you do?
I would like to put education on nonviolent communication.
Study biographies of well-known, compassionate people from Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and Buddha, and what was the one HPB liked so much, the Catholic chap on Molokai, Father Damien, who's now a saint, I believe. There are many wonderful examples we can study from people who were expressions of compassion. So study their biographies.
And watch kids in a Montessori class.
I think actually a good first step would be to think about, meditate about unity, to look around you and see, realize that there is unity, and to see if you can stretch that image ever further, remembering Richard's lecture. Where are you, Richard? You know, oh, Richard's outside. Okay, well, then we know a little bit about how far we can stretch our mind, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we need that all-encompassing vision of unity, and from there on, I think the rest will flow out.
Okay. All right. So, stretch your vision, or what? Envision unity. Jewel 7. Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, throw the jewel in there. Yeah. Okay, we got lots of steps to go here. We'll go on to the second step. I came to have faith in an enlightened way. And the tradition, for our group purpose, there's but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself, they're using these him and her words, in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. Look at your own world. During this step, we should take ourselves mentally to the summit of a high mountain where we can stand back and look at things from a different perspective. She says it might be helpful to think in terms of the Confucian concentric circles of compassion, starting with your family, moving out to your friends and community, and finally to the country in which you live and the world. When I come to gatherings like this, I experience our commonality, and it strengthens my faith in an enlightened way. So, any other suggestions for how we might, action steps we could take? Just make them short, just...
Spread the circles to non-human beings.
Good.
Well, and perhaps you can have a little laugh at yourself, yeah. When looking from the mountaintop down on your personal self. Yeah.
Laugh itself.
To add one more jewel.
Uh-huh.
Jewel number 3, we can look at the hierarchy that we are. Hierarchical.
Okay. Okay. We'll go on to the third step, unless there's more. The third step. Without understanding, I made a decision to practice the enlightened way. And the tradition is the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. So our desire to be part of a group like this we don't always understand what our decision was that we made to study theosophy or whatever, but it's all we have to do is have a desire to do it. So these traditions are very apropos. So in this step, you're practicing compassion for yourself. We hear love your neighbor as yourself in the 12 step programs. We are committed to taking a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, which means assets as well as our liabilities. When it's heard, whoa, sorry, I'm on the wrong page here. Sorry, so sorry. Well, anyway, practice mindfulness and loving kindness towards ourselves and others. Miss Armstrong writes, the golden rule requires self-knowledge. And it asks that we use our own feelings as guides to our behavior with others. If we treat ourselves harshly, this is the way we are likely to treat other people. Fear is the fundamental of our reptilian brain. It inspires 2 of the 4 F's, making us flee or fight what threatens us. It makes us wary and suspicious. This we can reframe in our thinking once it is understood. It requires mindfulness and loving kindness towards ourselves and others. My understanding comes through my daily practice of these principles.
What the words say, compassion for yourself, I would like to say, not your personal self, but your inner self. To do the things what your inner self will do for the world. That is what I think by compassion for yourself.
All right.
Yes?
Sure. Just your inner self. We may have to end up erasing it before we can go on to certain things, but meanwhile we can put them down.
I think compassion for our personal self is much
As
more
well.
required.
Yeah.
Because we can look on it as a wayward child or something like that, a pet that's undisciplined, but still be compassionate.
Yes.
Side note, I think that fear expresses itself using our reptile brain. So I think we need to keep thinking from our higher self. So maybe we could include jewels 4 and 5 here.
All right. Awesome.
Right? So
My
contributing.
jewel man here.
Yeah, well, this is a day about jewels, right?
Right.
So let's contribute the best that we have in ourselves.
We'll go on to the 4th step. The 4th step, empathy. I made a searching and fearless assessment of my ego. Each group, the tradition is each group should be autonomous, except in matters affecting other groups or as a whole. And that's where that part about we hear love your neighbor as yourself in 12-step programs, and we're committed to taking a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, which means our assets as well as our liabilities. Okay? And one of the action steps would be to sit in the center of your concentric circles. Direct your friendship, compassion, joy, and even-mindedness toward yourself and branch that out to include those you are neutral toward and dislike. I had another one here for the fourth step under empathy. 3 more stages are added to the immeasurable mind of love. Our pain, therefore, can become an education in compassion. We are mindful of how we steel ourselves to others' pain. So again, you can imagine yourself at the center of a series of concentric circles. After you have directed your friendship, compassion, joy, and even-mindedness toward yourself, you branch to include others, like I said. So call them by name. Sit beside them so they are vividly present to you. I like this quote, "Let thy soul lend its ear to every cry of pain, like as a lotus bears its heart to drink the morning sun. Let not the fierce sun dry one tear of pain before thyself has wiped it from the sufferer's eye. But let each burning human tear drop on thy heart and there remain, nor ever brush it off until the pain that caused it is removed." Voice of the silence. One of my favorites. Okay, the fifth step. Together with my sponsor, I made a commitment to a personal Zen practice. And then the tradition, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers. In practicing the immeasurables, we become aware of the selfishness that impedes our compassionate outreach, balk at the thought of extending friendship to the enemy, and rebels at the idea that I am neither unique nor exempt from life's ills. Here we can apply our analytic brain to help us become aware of the more instinctive, automatic processes of the old brain. Once we know that the cause of so much human pain is within ourselves, we have the motivation to change. And one of the ways we practice this is by you find yourself through the practice of locating yourself within the community. We learn through sharing ourselves with others and giving and getting. And so when in these 12-step groups, when one has a sponsor or a group or any group you're with where you're sharing those things, you're in effect giving yourself over to make some changes. Any other action steps that could be taken on this?
Jewels also up there?
Sure, love those jewels.
How about Jewel 6? It says here each group has but one primary purpose, to carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers.
Uh-huh.
How can I go into Marina if there's still one soul that's suffering? So this is the Hague. And if it includes also people who are not alcoholic.
Right. No, I just used those steps. Yeah. we're all have our stuff. Yeah, you can be included. Sixth step, action. Okay. I came to realize this practice as a lifetime discipline. An AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. Now, I think from what I've seen of these Theosophical groups, this is very much practiced within that structure, that we practice these principles, but we don't start a political group on something else. If we're going to do that, we go out and do it on our own. But they're very good traditions to follow in keeping a group from getting out of whack. What stood out for me in this step was the phrase that one small act of kindness can turn a life around. We can create spots of time for others, and that many of these will be the little nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and of love. Try to think of spots of time in your own life when somebody went out of their way to help you. Also remember the corrosive nature of unkind remarks and the effects they had on your mind. Make a resolution to act once every day in accordance with the positive version of the Golden Rule. Treat others as you would wish to be treated yourself. Resolve each day as well to follow the negative version of the Golden Rule. Do not do to others what you would not like them to do to you. Make an effort each day to change your negative thought patterns. As these new patterns become habitual, increase their frequency. Anything to add to this? You got a jewel for me? I know there's a jewel someplace.
Bit, yeah. On that one, I think one of the best is make a daily review every day of what you've done. I asked Jeffrey Barborka once how come there was nothing in meditation that I could find in Theosophical writings, and what was the practice. And he told me, he wrote me a little letter and said the thing to do is every night go back through your day backwards and analyze all of your actions and resolve to bring them up to a little higher level. So daily review.
Mm-hmm. That's coming up in the 10th step, by the
Well, I'll bring it up again.
But you can, daily review never hurts. The 7th step. I came to realize how little we know is the title of this step. I came to realize the importance of seeing the effects of ego-centered actions. And every AA group should be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. I don't think I've ever seen a real, a Theosophy group advertised on TV, or you know what I mean. It's like really the people that are interested, they're come in a different way. It's because we're not promoting. Recognize and appreciate the unknown and unknowable. Become sensitive to overconfident assertions of certainty in ourselves and other people. And make ourselves aware of the numinous mystery of each human being we encounter during the day. I know there's a jewel in there for that. Yeah? The 8th step. How should we speak to one another? And I came to realize the importance of the role of forgiveness. And Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. Well, again, I see this throughout our organizations, that we're there out of our hearts. Part of this step is work towards Socratic dialogue with each other. Converse kindly and courteously, and listen carefully to what's being said. Do we want to win the argument or seek the truth? If we were to embrace the Theosophical model, there is no religion higher than the truth, and use it as a tool to translate and understand where people are coming from, we would learn much about others and become aware of where and how our communication goes awry. So, listen and speak from the heart. Any other action steps to go in here? Got a jewel for me? He's my go-to guy.
Something else, maybe listen to learn. So maybe, realize that possibly that there's something else that you can learn, as opposed to we often listen to judge.
Listen to learn.
And you can put any jewel there.
Yes. That's a big jewel.
maybe use the Socrates method.
And what?
The method of Socrates.
Yes. Concern for everybody. I made a commitment to work on my relations with others. AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards and committees directly responsible to those they serve. So take note of the way you and your friends speak about foreigners. Apply the insights gained through the 8th step in your discussions. Incorporate in your mindfulness practice the idea of your interdependence on others. Okay, well, there was, you talked about do not attach yourself to any particular creed so exclusively that you disbelieve all the rest. Otherwise, you will lose much good and you will fail to recognize the real truth of the matter. This was from, I'm trying to find the first part of the page. Oh, Lordy. So, well, everyone praises what he believes his God is, his own creature, and in praising it, he praises himself. Consequently, he blames the beliefs of others, which he would not do if he were just. But his dislike is based on ignorance. So we tend to sometimes think ours is so right, and but we need to really have that concern for everyone, have that that there are many, many expressions of truth. And that was just winging it. The 10th step, knowledge. I started to study the role of personal reflection. And then Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues. Hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. Recall the 7th step and remind yourself of how little we know. There's a lot of pontification going on about foreign affairs from a position of dangerous ignorance. The action in this step is to activate your interest in the stranger. Pick a nation or a religious or cultural tradition. Read about it. Watch a movie. Look into the country's poetry and literature. We lead busy lives, but make it a point to do this twice a month. That we do tend to, unless we have this 10th step, unless we go over our day before sleep, you know, and integrate that learning. We start on that spiral up. And if we don't do that, I see in many of the programs, that's where people seem to relapse into their old behaviors. And that can be a very serious matter for them, or it can, when they finally wake up, it can really renew their commitment to try some more. I made a commitment to deepen my realization of the enlightened way. And then the tradition is our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. And I really see that embodied in this group here today, the way people are just, they're just filling in and working as a group and in a group mind. And, we don't have any stars. We're just, it's really, we're anonymously, I mean, we have names, but we're not, advertising so-and-so's going to, we're just putting it together as a group. And I really like that about this group. Her heading for this is love your enemies. It's time to investigate your enemy using the science of compassion in the same way you got to know your adopted foreign nation or tradition in the 10th step. This is about recognizing our defining moments in our lives that lead to us consciously beginning our spiritual work in the world. For me, it began 55 years ago as a troubled teenager when I was expelled from high school and sent to a special summer camp for troubled teens at a year-round school that housed developmentally disabled children and severe mentally ill children. I immediately fell in with the rebellious crowd, thinking of ways to get around the rules. But one opportunity that arose for me during that summer was to work with developmentally disabled children for the rest of the summer. I always remembered that, and when I was a young divorced mother with one child, I was able to get a job working with developmentally disabled adults, and that was the beginning of a 25-year teaching career. And it gave me the chance to complete my education, working towards a goal that inspired me. The golden rule requires us to use our afflictions to make the difference in the lives of others. We cannot allow ourselves to feel paralyzed by the immensity of global misery. And then the 12th step. Having raised the Bodhi mind, Love Your Enemies is the title, I came to realize that a commitment to serve others is an expression of the enlightened way. So in the tradition, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. It's time to investigate your enemy using the science of compassion, in the same way you got to know your adopted foreign nation or tradition in the 10th step. And it's to put all these steps in practice. Are we not all works in progress? As we wake ourselves up, we can continue on the path to becoming bodhisattvas, or at least not adding to the suffering of the world. Thank you. So that's it. Sorry it got jumbled. Thank you.